Representation is a very easy concept to understand. It refers to the way people, events, issues, or subjects are presented in text. And that sounds a little bit simplistic, but another way to think about it is to look at representation as versions of reality. To use an example of how this works, let's look at Adolf Hitler's representation in these three images. First, we have the heroic representation of Hitler. Then we have the idea of Hitler as a family man as represented in this text. And then we have a comical representation of Hitler in this propaganda comic cartoon from the period. By looking at the specific techniques used to construct each of these images, we can then interrogate the kinds of representations being created. Or we can look at representation in terms of events. So if we take the war in Iraq, we can look at the representation as war as being entirely violent, or we can look at war as being a process of conquest, even liberation, as we can see in this image with Saddam Hussein's statue being torn down. We can look at the invasion of Iraq as being a way of helping helping children and the vulnerable. Or we can represent the war entirely from a different perspective by looking at another group of people. Each of these representations changes the way we look at things. By looking at a subject like the representation of wives, we can look at different ideas about what a wife is through these representations. And looking at popular culture from recent times with this show, The Good Wife, or even looking at journalistic pictures like this one of Hillary Clinton standing by her husband, the former President Bill Clinton, who had to confess to cheating on her. She later ran for president herself and is currently the US Secretary of State. So if we think about representation, we can think that it implies that texts construct versions of reality. That is at the center of what we think of when we talk about representation.